Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be with you. Kathy, thank you so much for your generous words and for your outstanding leadership of the UN Foundation. I want to offer my deepest thanks for this incredible award, which I am pleased to accept on behalf of the countless public servants across the U.S. government who work hard every day to bring us closer to our goal of a world without malaria. It's also great to be able to be with you and celebrate 10 years of nothing but nets. Kathy overhyped my basketball prowess. I did, back in the day, play some basketball, but I have to confess that nothing but net was not a term frequently used to describe my jump shot. I want to thank all the leaders today who are here throughout government, the private sector, and the public health community, members of our diplomatic corps, and Admiral Tim Ziemer, our heroic global malaria coordinator. Let's give them all a hand, please. I especially want to salute all the champions here today. That includes Jack Delaney and Griffin Bader, who have held 3-on-3 basketball tournaments to raise awareness and funds to fight malaria. And it includes 15-year-old Naomi Kodama, who's been donating her birthday money to this cause since she was 7 years old. 7. Now give them a hand as well, please. I'm not going to give a very long speech. I don't want to be, as you might say, a buzzkill, though I understand in this audience that's not necessarily a bad thing. I want to begin by thanking Nothing But Nets, starting with that powerful column Rick Riley wrote in the pages of Sports Illustrated. You ignited a global movement. All told, you've distributed nearly 10 million bed nets, which shows that all of us, from students to CEOs to superstar athletes like Abby Wambach and Steph Curry, can make a world of difference. We're hoping, by the way, that groups like the NBA and the NCAA will continue to play a leadership role on this issue. President Obama shares your passion. Promoting global health and global health security is a cornerstone of his foreign policy. We've committed billions of dollars to the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, bringing together public and private funders. Thanks to our collective hard work and the work of so many partners, we've made great strides. Maternal mortality is down. Child mortality is down. We're pursuing our goal to be the first AIDS-free generation. We led the global response against Ebola, supporting our partners in West Africa. And as we speak, we're applying those hard-learned lessons to combat the Zika virus. While it may not always grab the headlines, there are few diseases that have attacked as vigorously as malaria. Over the past 7 years, President Obama has built on President Bush's landmark President's Malaria Initiative, more than doubling its funding. Led by USAID and CDC, and drawing on agencies from the Peace Corps to the Department of Defense, the Obama administration has invested nearly $5 billion in the fight against malaria. We've worked with partner countries, donors, and multilateral organizations across the globe. In just the past year, we protected nearly 16 million people by spraying homes. We delivered more than 42 million long-lasting insecticide-treated nets, 60 million anti-malarial treatments, and 54 million rapid diagnostic tests. It all adds up. Together, we've come closer than ever to banishing the scourge of malaria from the planet. As Kathy said, we didn't just meet the Millennium Development Goal, we blew past it, and now it's on to the Sustainable Development Goals. Since 2000, we've halved the number of children killed by malaria. and saved more than 6 million lives. That's your collective work. Together, we've reinforced shaky health systems. Over 100 countries now are malaria-free, and another 57 cut their incidence of malaria by at least 3/4. More kids can go to school. More parents can go to work. More people can say, as one Malian mother did, quote, "I came to the community health worker because my son had a fever, and I'm thankful that we were able to get medicine." But as we all know, our work is far from done. More than 3 billion people remain at risk of contracting malaria. Malaria continues to steal about 800 of Africa's children each day, enough to fill this room 3 times over. Now, I know how inspiring it was to hear Thon Scholl's story of life as a lost boy, but we can't forget that malaria still stalks millions of refugees fleeing violence and civil war. It endangers the pregnancies of mothers and the health of newborns. Economists estimate the direct cost of malaria at $12 billion a year, and the disease's true cost is likely far greater. Now, we're seeing the spread of drug-resistant malaria strains, even as climate change potentially expands the range of the mosquitoes who carry malaria. It's no wonder that in India, they once called malaria the king of diseases. That's why, at the UN Sustainable Development Goals Summit last September, President Obama declared that it is, quote, "a moral outrage that many children are just one mosquito bite away from death." And of course, he's absolutely right. Whether it's a child with malaria or a mother with HIV, these afflictions tear at the consciences and threaten human dignity. But this is not just a moral imperative. When people are free of disease, they can be free to pursue other opportunities, to start businesses, advocate for political progress, or end civil conflicts. So I'm here today for the very same reason that my first speech as National Security Advisor was on development. And that is because in our interconnected world, threats to public health are a serious national security concern for the United States. It's right there, in fact, in the Worldwide Threat Assessment that sits on my desk. Beating diseases like malaria is not only the right thing to do, it is also the smart thing to do for our common security. In his State of the Union address last month, the President made clear that fighting malaria remains a top priority. And I am proud that the administration's recently submitted budget request asks for an additional $200 million for the President's malaria initiative, bringing our total annual request to $874 million. With these new resources, we will be able to take bold steps to combat this killer that comes in the dusk and the night. First, we're adding PMI programs in 3 new countries: Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire, and Cameroon. And we're expanding our existing program in Burkina Faso. That means nearly 70 million more at-risk people will have access to insecticide-treated nets, anti-malarial drugs, and other interventions. Our work will now cover roughly 332 million people, 92% of those at risk, from Senegal to Cameroon. Second, the United States, in partnership with host governments, NGOs, and other players, is launching an effort to eliminate malaria in 2 countries altogether: Zambia and Cambodia. Zambia has suffered from very high rates of malaria, so if we can eliminate it there, we can eliminate it anywhere. And because Cambodia is the geographic epicenter of emerging drug resistance. Ridding it of malaria would minimize the threat of drug-resistant malaria elsewhere. Third, we're going to provide 14 million more bed nets and ensure that over 27 million people in sub-Saharan Africa can sleep safely at night. Because as you know well, these low-cost bed nets are the most effective malaria intervention we have. Finally, working with both public and private sector researchers, we're going to accelerate the research, development, and evaluation of new tools to combat malaria. Greater control over malaria-ridden mosquitoes, life-saving vaccines and medicines, all of this will enable us to spark the next big discovery. These steps represent our intensified commitment to a world without malaria, and we're calling on Congress to continue the tradition of bipartisan support for global health and to fully fund these efforts, because the one thing we can't afford to do is to take our eye off the ball. Since I've started speaking, we estimate more than 400 people have contracted malaria. 6 children were taken from us, beautiful young people who will not grow up to become the next Nelson Mandela or Gracia Machel. As my good friend, our USAID Administrator, Gail Smith, has said, and I quote, "The battle against malaria is also a battle against complacency." But whether we're confronting apathy in the developed world or drug resistance in the developing world, we can overcome these obstacles. Why am I so convinced of that? Because we've done it before. 100 years ago, recall, malaria haunted the Western world. Now it's a distant memory. As recently as the mid-20th century, malaria was a killer in this country. In muggy Washington, D.C. today, however, the whine of a mosquito on a summer night is considered just a nuisance, not a death sentence. So there's no excuse for inaction. We can do this. It won't be easy, but we must do this. And when I look at all of you, when I think about all we have already accomplished together, I'm very confident that we'll succeed. Thank you all very, very much for all you're doing.